Okay, today's lesson we're going to be looking at a couple of the other forms that the sine equation can come in. Okay? So, in the previous lesson you saw the y equals sine x equation in standard form. Okay? Now we're going to put it in the transformational form and in mapping notation. Okay? So, very easy concepts again. I'll show you a couple. We'll do a bunch repeatedly in class, and you'll quickly get the hang of it. Okay? So here's the standard form that we were used to. Okay? Again, if you're graphing it, you would go right to left. You know, the sinusoidal axis is up 1, and you would have to start your graph 90 to the left. Okay? Your period is the reciprocal of this number times 360. Okay? So in this case, the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3. 1/3 of 360 is 120, so my period here would be 120, amplitude is 2. Just a quick review, but we're not interested in that in this lesson. What I'm interested in is putting this equation into transformational form. Okay? Well, in transformational form, I'm going to take basically the two numbers that affect your graph vertically, okay, which is the +1 and the 2, to the other side over here with the y. In order to do this, okay, first I subtract 1 from both sides. It's going to make this go away, and I'm going to be left with y minus 1 equals 2 under the sine 3x plus 90 degrees. Okay. Now I said I also want to bring the 2 over to the other side. What I've got here is 2 times all this. The opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. Or the way I like to think of it is, what do I have to multiply by 2 to get 1? Okay, it's 1/2. So if I multiply 2 by 1/2, this basically makes this 1 out in front. Okay. Over here, I also multiply this whole thing by 1/2. So I'm left with 1/2 onto y minus 1 equals, this becomes just 1, you don't have to show 1, sine of 3 onto x plus 90 degrees. That's transformational form. Basically you're taking two numbers that affect the graph vertically over to the left-hand side. So the +1 comes over and the 2 comes over. I'll show you another example later. The next thing I want to show you, okay, mapping notation. The same equation. We're just going to do mapping notation instead. So if you remember back in your grade 9, mapping notation starts with x, y, with the arrow. So you're basically telling the person that's doing the graph, how's my graph affected in the x, how's my graph affected in the y. So, in the x, okay, my period, first of all, my stretch, my period, okay, this is the number that affects the period, is only a third as big as it was before. So remember, we were doing the reciprocal of 3, so it's only 1/3 as big as what it used to be. Okay. Then, gain in the horizontal and the x, if I go on left or right, I've told the person how much a stretch is 1/3 as big. If I go on left or right in the x, well, I've gone left 90 degrees. Left is subtract, so subtract 90 degrees. So now you've told the person everything about the graph in the x direction. Now we talk about the y. Okay. So again, the stretch goes out in front of the y. Well, the stretch in this case, how much have I stretched it up or down? I've stretched it 2. Okay, so the 2 goes out in front. And then finally, okay, have I moved the entire graph up or down? Okay, well, I've moved it, the entire graph up 1. So that's just +1. And there, you're done. Okay, that's all there is to mapping notation. So what I'm going to do is one more example for you. In this lesson, again, I'll do more in class, but Okay, let's take this equation here, put it into both transformational and mapping notation. Okay. Again, for transformational, okay, I have to add 4 to both sides. I want this number over here. I also want the 3 over. Once you're good at these, you don't have to do every step mentally in your head, but until then, okay. So add 4 to both sides. This is going to disappear. I'll have y plus 4 is equal to, okay, 3 onto the sine 1/2 x minus 180. Minus 180 degrees. Okay. Bringing the 3 over, I would be dividing the whole thing by 3 or multiplying by 1/3. Okay, so times 1/3 times this whole thing by 1/3. End up with 1/3 onto y plus 4 equals sine 1/2 x minus 180 degrees. Now on the mapping notation, I'm telling the person drawing this sine wave what we've done to it in both the x and y directions. Okay. So in the y, or excuse me, we'll do the x first here. In the x direction, okay, how much if I stretch the period? Okay. Remember again, the period is the reciprocal of this number, so the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. So now my period is twice as long. Okay. And then have I moved it left or right horizontally? Okay. So minus 180 means I've gone 180 to the right. To the right on any number line is, any normal number line is positive, so plus 180. So now I've told the person the x direction, everything that's happened to my wave. Now we talk about the y direction. In the y, okay, there's the number that affects my amplitude, okay, the vertical amount that it goes up or down. So that's a 3. So I say it's 3y. Okay. And then have I moved my entire graph up or down? Well, I've moved it down 4. Okay, so that's a minus 4. And we're done.